Hi, Helen.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm well. How are you? Happy New Year.
You too. Did you have a good holiday season?
Yeah, it was a much needed break. Much needed.
Yeah.
Were you able to take a real vacation?
Eh, it started that way, but didn't quite end up the way I hoped.
Oh,
That's all right.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, I have an 85-year-old aunt. Things are going to happen. So.
I'm so sorry. No, the holidays is really the worst time of year.
Yeah.
To have people sick and things. I'm really glad you're feeling better though. I know you were sick before the holiday.
Yeah, I was sick the week of Thanksgiving and after. I wasn't really feeling sick. I just had COVID.
Yeah.
Used to you had COVID, you're like, oh my God. Now it's like, oh, there you got COVID. Yay.
It has become that way, hasn't it?
Yeah. Fortunately, people aren't getting as sick when they get it.
Right.
Were initially. So
I'm gonna keep my fingers crossed, but I haven't gotten COVID yet.
I caught it when I went to Emmitsburg, Maryland for a class. I got it up there.
Of all things, right?
Yeah,
all
taking
the
care of
people,
patients.
all the
Yeah,
people you interact with on a daily basis, and you get it on in a class.
right. Out seeing patients, giving vaccines and stuff. No, never got it.
It's crazy.
That's all.
I'm glad you're better for sure.
Thank you. I appreciate you having the meeting early. Starting it early. I always I get close to meeting time and I go, I've got time to do this one more thing.
So what usually happens with me is I'll be like, oh, it's 10 minutes away, and I'll start getting into an email or something,
Mhm.
and then I look back up and I'm like, oh my goodness, it's 9:59. Gotta jump in.
Or worse for me, I've done it's like, oh, it's 5 after. Isn't that damn?
It happens.
Um,
It definitely happens. It's so different like when you're meeting in person, like you know that you have to mentally prepare for the trip, so you
right.
naturally go early. But when it's virtual, it's like, oh, I'm gonna be at my desk. I have time to get this last assignment in.
Hmm.
And then you look at the time.
Yeah. It's 10 o'clock.
Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm hanging in there. How about yourself?
Oh, doing all right. Hey, Liza.
Hi,
How are
everybody.
you, Eliza?
Good morning.
I was watching the city council meeting.
Oh, no.
You did great.
Oh, thanks.
They
Yeah.
asked good questions that were helpful for me to hear, like what like them as city council members are interested in. I was happy to hear Deidreana talking about how do we advocate at a different level than city. So anyway, mostly that you did great.
Thank you. And it did add a little bit of work to us, and we're going to have to talk about it a little bit in this meeting and figure out how we would like to move forward with this, because one of the questions was, what are your top 3 wish list items so that we can consider it
Yeah.
for the budget process? So
Yeah.
I'm like,
Great question, but
it is
a
a
lot
great
of work
question.
behind the question.
And I am not going down that rabbit hole alone, because that is a massive question. And we do have a wish list that we did start some time ago, but it is something that we do need to figure out if we want to start a discussion about that in this committee or punt it to policy and planning or take it up at a full HSAC meeting for a full discussion there. But, asking for a wish list is like throwing spaghetti at a wall in a really large group. So it's better to sort of try and put some parameters if we can. Otherwise, we'll spend 2 years arguing about what 3 things become those wish list items, and we don't have 3 years.
Well, it is 2 minutes after 10, and we have at least 3 of our 4 current members. Eliza is here as our guest, pending being a member. So I will go ahead and call this meeting to order because we do have a quorum. 3 of the 5 of the 4 that we have, and well, actually, we have 4 now. Charita's here. Yay! All right. So the first item on our agenda usually is to approve the minutes from the previous meeting. I noticed that Russ sent those out earlier this morning. Has anyone had a chance to look at them yet? I just, they look fine to me. And I will take a motion to approve the minutes. Sharita, give me a second, okay? So while you take a minute and look at the minutes, and in the meantime, I will welcome Eliza. Eliza is our recommendation. So, well, she's here at this meeting so that we can, as the executive committee, recommend her as vice chair for the HSAC. And of course, that will have to be voted on at our next HSAC meeting. But welcome, Eliza, and thank you very much for your interest. We appreciate you taking on this role, especially knowing that in August, you get to take my role.
Yes, thank you for stepping up and agreeing to run, Eliza. Thank you.
Yeah, happy to be here. Hopefully you all can teach me a lot, and well, I'll lean on everybody to support me as I'm, in this position and then moving into the chair, as long as the vote goes through in August. So, and thank you all for spending that time with me chatting and talking about, what y'all were thinking, and that was really helpful.
Hi, Sally. I see your email, and yes, they don't go to non-committee meetings to be adopted because the executive committee is the one that has to adopt it, but they are public records. So once they're adopted, they'll be posted on the website. Is that correct? That is correct, right? So you'll have access to them then, Sally. So Jonathan is a motion to adopt. Charita is seconded, and we don't have an agenda posted for this particular meeting. So, and are there, okay, Russell concurs, so, and I concur, so the minutes are approved. There we go. At this point, I am going to turn this meeting over to Colin because he usually runs it from this point on to do the agenda and everything else. He's got all the ins and outs and everything that needs to be talked about.
Yeah, I think there's two pieces I would like to talk a little bit about before we get into the agenda planning, because it may impact our agenda planning. One, I think Sharita and I were talking earlier this week about the gaps analysis, and that may be ready for presentation, but I think Sharita was waiting on confirmation from Colleen for a status update. Sharita, do you have any updates on that by any chance?
She called me back. When she called me back, I was super busy.
Okay.
I have not talked to her this morning. I'm texting her, and I'm hoping to get a confirmation before we're out of this meeting.
Okay, no worries. If you don't have a confirmation for it, we can sort of tentatively put it on there, and we can always take it off because we'll send the agenda out next Wednesday. So as long as we have a confirmation, we can either keep it on or we can take it off of that meeting agenda. So.
And just to clarify, is this gaps analysis, and this, I'm not trying to open up a can of worms here. I know there's supposed to be like a regular routine of gaps analyses. Is that how you say it? There's like a monster one that gets done, and then there's in between the monster ones, there are comprehensive is probably the word. There's more focused one. Am I right that this is one of the more, we're still talking about one of the more focused ones that started maybe 18 months or so ago?
Yes.
Like COVID, all this stuff?
So actually this was supposed to be like a micro one, not a big one.
Okay.
But because of the things that we identified and then the pandemic came and it turned into a monster one because what we realized is it was in order to do it justice, we needed to do it a certain way, right? And then we had interns, no staff capacity, a lot of issues. I think it's been going on since the pandemic. I think it's actually been that long, so more than 18 months, about
Okay.
24, 35 months, something like that.
It's been a minute.
It's been a minute. So, and I think that we talked now about doing the mini ones in a different way, more so doing like a HMIS dive and letting that suffice, and then doing these big ones, kind of like what we thought was gonna be a small one in those with those odd years or what, every 5 years or whatever it is that HUD requires. So a lot of great work was done, a lot of interviews was done. It's a lot of information that needs to get back and get shared. And this committee has gone through a lot of changes and worked very diligently to produce a really good product. And they really wanted to be done in last month. So my hope is that yes, they're ready.
One of the challenges we have with this type of gaps analysis is that once we identify the gaps, if we figure out a plan to put in place, a year or two later, we're going to have to repeat the exact same process to see whether or not any of those gaps have closed. And that becomes a little bit of a challenge because the time it takes to do these types of analysis, and a lot of them are really focused on a very small subset of households experiencing homelessness in Durham. So it's, we have to look at the cost benefit analysis, and we could easily get stuck in a spiral of sort of repeating the same type of thing and missing out on some of the big things. We've got some conversations we need to have about how and what gaps do we look at. We did do we did have to do a coordinated entry analysis that we pulled some data from HMIS, looking at our longitudinal system analysis data sets that went with our state application. That was a pretty high level cross covering of things. And we can easily replicate that annually, as it's a much simpler process. It's a matter of a day or two of work versus months and months of work. Maybe more than a day or two of work, but it's not the months and years that some of these other more intensive analysis take. So we can look at that. So we've got, all right, so that's that. We did present to City Council yesterday about the homeless system. And during that presentation, several council members were interested to find out what the top 3 wish list would be of our continuum to be considered for budgeting process. We did start a wish list a long time ago, kind of when we were, I'm trying to think when it was probably in 2020 during the pandemic. I do have a spreadsheet somewhere. I got to find it. I haven't had the time to go digging through it yet. But we do have a wish list that we started putting together. There's also the wish list that Peter Skillern had started putting together, talking to a lot of the providers DCRC, Project Access, Housing for New Hope, Urban Ministries, as well as himself. So we've got a lot of stuff out there. We do need to kind of talk as an executive committee as to where do we want to sort of set the primary responsibility of kind of triaging some of this down to what are the top 3 items. Because council would like this to be part of their, have this information to be part of budgeting, which is starting now, essentially. So is this something that the executive committee would like to take the lead on? Is this something that you'd like to punt to policy and planning, or is this something you would like to open to the full HSAC? And if you want to open it to full HSAC, we could do that and then take whatever comes up there and then funnel it back to a subcommittee for further flushing out. There's a lot of ways we could do it. I want to get your thoughts.
What kind of time frame are we working under to get this wish list done? Knowing how budget season works.
Sooner than later. I would say I don't have a deadline on it, but the sooner we could get it pulled together, the better.
I know
Is
the county.
probably the right answer.
Yeah, I know in county, most things are approved by April
Mhm.
and formally approved in the end of June.
Oh, yeah.
Usually if you don't have it in the budget by April, it's probably not going to get in there.
I would say we really kind of need this done by February in the ideal world. So that would be.
And they're asking with a pretty broad brush, and they're talking about things to invest in using annual budget funds, so to speak.
Whatever the wish list is. There wasn't a, here, you have this much. It was just sort of, what's the wish list for them to consider? There wasn't a, we do know that we do have a dire need for more permanent supportive housing. And that is a huge need that we have. So that would be, I would say, the low hanging fruit.
Yeah, and I think, just based on the numbers we're seeing, I think, and hopefully the special NOFO will work out for additional street outreach. There needs to be more street outreach capacity, because if you've got limited capacity in the shelters, you've only got so many places for people to move on. You've got more people that are, so their continued commitment to that is critical, and that's been with local funds. So that's a good. I almost want, so I think it's hard to have this discussion with me here in executive committee, where I don't know how we don't trigger some conflict. But it makes me wonder if, not necessarily go to planning and policy, because it seems like they've got quite a lot on their plates, but could a group that included the executive committee and a few other people be gathered together to have that conversation and bring something back to the next HSAC? It's like, here's kind of, so that there's a little, like, for us to say, like, we basically need a special task force, time limited, to have this conversation and include a few providers and maybe some people off HSAC, so that there's a few more voices at the table without kind of belaboring it with, or putting additional labor onto planning and policy right now.
Question, this, last night at the city council meeting, was this an invitation for really in-depth, detailed proposals, or is this just give us the 3 things very generally?
I'll have to, it sounded, the way the question was worded, it was the big version of it, not a bring us specific proposals. It was kind of like, bring us a concept and a dollar amount. And then, that's the way I would perceive it. It's sort of like, let's use permanent supportive housing as an example. I'm not saying that is the answer, but it's just the easiest one to do. It's like, okay, well, permanent support, we would come back and say permanent supportive housing, it's a huge need. here is, we need 100 units, at least 100 units of permanent supportive housing. We anticipate it costing X for rent, X for supportive services. We don't know who's doing any of it, but that's a big ask. Let's say it's a day shelter. Well, that's a big construction project. Let's say it's a new non-congregate shelter. That's a bigger ask, and that's a 5 or 10 year capital project that isn't going to happen in the next budget cycle. So it's, I think, sort of lining up kind of all of them and sort of figuring out, here's what we want, here's what we can do in a year, here are some bigger long-term investments that we also need to sort of put it on there.
I think we should get something to them. Absolutely. So however we can make the practical work of getting it to them in a very short time frame. I, of course, think it would be great if we were able to incorporate as much feedback as possible from across our COC, but it is a very short time frame. And there's already, let's see here, there's already a survey going out for other stuff. I was just sort of wondering if a survey is, well, I don't know how what the response rates look like, when those go out, but that might also be an option. Sorry about that. I got some noise in the background.
Yes, this is so the city's ARPA funds have already been allocated. The county, I don't know where the county is on their ARPA funds. I don't know if you know, Helen, or not, but the city's ARPA funds are dispersed, to my knowledge. And the home ARP funds, this request would be separate of those home ARP funds, but depending on what we were doing and timelines, could be added to, perhaps, if there were money in the budget and it was something that was worth doing, could be potentially added to that home ARP pot. But and that's the process we're still working through, is what's the best use of those home ARP funds, which is about $4 million.
Go ahead, Eliza.
Just wanted to offer one thing, or I guess two things. One is, I have been working on a spreadsheet that describes all the ARPA money, and I have it for the city. It's all like put together with the project descriptions. I don't know if that would be helpful to understand where money is going from the city as it relates to some things that y'all might be thinking about. With the county, they just approved theirs, and I don't have the project descriptions. I'm trying to get them, but I can just share what I have if that's helpful for context. I couldn't find anything anywhere where it like compiled it clearly. And so that was something I was doing and could see a lot of connections to different things that I'm connected to. So happy to share that. I would also say that what Russ shared sounds great to me. And the other thing that I heard in that meeting was, the meeting yesterday afternoon, was the justice involved piece. And so what Russ was offering kind of helps us connect to, I've like heard this name Gudrun a couple of times since I was learning about HSAC stuff. And so, just like thinking about places where maybe city council is thinking they're already connected. But, I don't know if Gudrun has been a part of HSAC. I just know in my experience, I haven't heard or seen a lot of connections to justice involved. And I know that several folks on city council have interest in that as well.
So let me give a little bit of backfill on the justice involved. Justice involved housing is a big priority for the mayor. And she applied for a Bloomberg Foundation grant. And Durham is one of 10 or 12 cities across the world that received one of these grants. So Durham is in the process of going through a Bloomberg coaching session to define the problem, to research the problem, design pilots and testing, and part of the agreement is implementation of one of the final versions of it. There are 12 people on the core Durham housing involved Bloomberg team. I'm one of the 12. Anthony Scott from DHA is on there. Somebody from Gudrun's team at CJRC is on the team. Person with lived experience on the team. It's a wide group of city, county, and nonprofits that are part of the core team. The Housing for New Hope Street outreach team came and talked to the group about Justice Involved, who are unsheltered. Ryan Smith, who's community safety director, came and talked to share his experience. There is also a Familiar Faces initiative group, which is being stood up by, I don't know who's leading that one, but I just got an email to join that meeting to talk about those things. So there's a lot happening on the Justice Involved, and I don't want to say like, let's not do anything, but because we've got this whole iterative process that's going through, and it's partnered with Harvard, and it's like PhD, not PhD level, but it's serious major work and like a 9-month time investment to go through research and interviews with people.
The Familiar Faces Initiative is through the National Association of Counties. Commissioner Jacobs and Gudrun and I are leading that one up. Russ has been involved. I know you've been invited. There's been a lot of work going around. What some of the focus areas we're working on is obviously housing, but it is more of a justice involved focus. But we're also looking at data sharing, a big push on data sharing, because we know that that's one of the areas that we have, is trying to be able to make sure we can get data legally where it needs to be, so that we're not all trying to recreate the wheel, you know. And then we were looking at case management software. So that's something that, as a part of a good, efficient way of data sharing, if we're all using the same software and can talk to each other, that helps as well. But that's just a part of that.
Looking at data software and people want to use it, we already have the HMIS, and buying licenses is a whole lot cheaper than buying and starting a whole nother system that's not going to talk to the other systems.
Yeah,
That's a good point. But a lot of us don't use HMIS, and I don't know a whole lot about it myself.
Yeah, but
What you can do with it. Can you do, I mean,
you can track a lot of data.
well, and I mean, one of those calls that Helen and I were on was the one that involved the Corporation for Supportive Housing, and they're finding ways, and I think continuing to push for more integration of the data. Like, we do always end up in these conversations like, well, HMIS can't talk to anything. It's not allowed to talk to anything. And I think the world is hitting the point where that can't continue to be the situation. I'm not saying you're saying that, Colin. It's like an industry thing.
It's because I've run into this in at least 2 other continuums of care that I've worked in. And the challenge is HMIS can talk to other databases as long as the other database is exactly configured the same way, so you can export data into an Excel CSV file and upload it between the 2. But if the data points aren't exactly the same, you can't move data from point A to point B cleanly or easily. And WellSky, the proprietary person who built or owns HMIS that we use, is very territorial and doesn't allow people to have like a developer's license that allows you to integrate your data and figure out how to tie fields together. I don't know why that is. I suspect it has something to do with all the HIPAA rules about the client data in there, and they don't want external groups coming in and messing up systems and HUD reporting tools. But I don't know for sure what the official reason is, but it's been a challenge in multiple jurisdictions I've been in, with organizations trying to have a custom database that they wanted the entire organization to use because they need more than homeless services, and then all that data to go back and forth. And
yeah,
it's never worked in 20 years.
So if we need to come up with a solution quick, I mean, could we have this group and then I'm just wondering, like maybe 3 or 4 more people to get together to sort of put together a quick hit list just based on the data that we have. I think, it's the stuff Eliza's got be helpful. Jonathan, I think your point's really good around, we're doing this survey now, and maybe that'll help. Actually, if we can somehow slip in there, oh, by the way, we're going to be using this data for something else that's very pressing. That may help, because it sounds like, if they're open to big asks, this is a good opportunity. And I hear what you're saying earlier, Colin, about like the capital piece. I don't know how anything we go to them doesn't have, like 2 of the 3 are going to have capital in it, because we don't have, the community does not have a lot of properties that are going to be willing to work with us, or able to work with us. And so I think every answer includes, we have to build it, or we have to buy and convert it, as is happening in so many communities. So I'm just trying to think of what other people we'd add, what other positions, so to speak.
I do know there's a ton of, there was an RFP that closed last year, about $15 million worth of construction that came out of city dollars that's being tied to tax credit. So there's a lot of construction in the pipeline. I'm just trying to get a handle on how much of that and who's doing it, because depending on who it is, all of those are required to take vouchers. They're required to sort of take anything that the city's put money in. We have a little bit of an ability for them to work with us to some degree. But I think you're right. I think there still will need to be more construction, especially if we're looking at, targeted construction, but we got to be careful that we don't, the pros and cons of creating a PSH project that is full of really high barrier folks without enough supportive services in place to prevent it from being just sort of going in the wrong direction.
Right.
If you don't have appropriate supports there, mental health and substance abuse can quickly get out of control, and things people are trying to get away from end up creeping back in, and then it just becomes a massive problem, not just for the PSH, but the community as at large.
So I've heard we could either do this, make this decision as the executive committee, or we could invite and create a subcommittee. Keep in mind that our next HSAC meeting is January 18th, so it's only a few days away, a little over a week and a half, or maybe not quite 2 weeks. So if we're shooting for that meeting, then we've got a very limited time.
I like the idea of the executive committee kind of spearheading it to a degree and inviting others to join. Like we set a meeting date. Anybody who would like to join joins. Maybe executive committee comes up with whatever, 3-5 items. And then we put out a full survey to the full COC and kind of get people to prioritize those and see what comes back from that survey.
Just like the survey that just went out for the.
I think, and people participate or they don't. But if you don't participate, then don't get upset if what you thought was important ends up not being at the top of the list. But it's also one of those things, we don't want people out necessarily lobbying for self-interest. We kind of want to have it based on, data should be guiding this, and we clearly have the data. We have some serious needs and unsheltered homelessness.
You prosecuting your whore, you bitch. I'm gonna fuck you, you bitch.
Hey, someone needs to kick him out of the meeting.
Melissa, can you kick this person out? Thank you.
That's the problem with having open meetings.
How did they get in though?
It's an open meeting.
It's a publicly available meeting, and if he registered, he can register to show up.
That was mild compared to that one we had in planning policy. Remember, Sarita?
That was awful.
It was terrible. It was traumatizing.
That was literally traumatizing, Lord.
Mhm. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, Zoom bombers become more and more likely, unfortunately. But I did kick them and I reported it to Zoom, so hopefully that helps.
Yeah. Thank you, Melissa. So I think maybe we could pull the data. We definitely know we definitely know we have a permanent supportive housing need, and we definitely have an unsheltered homeless need. Then the next question would be, based on that data, what are the interventions that are required to meet that need? Obviously, affordable units that will accept people and the supportive services to maintain those households and some operating costs to pay the water bill for folks who have no income and are struggling to get disability payments.
I do think there's a lot of, and I know it needs to be fully explored. And again, I don't want to open up a can of worms, but there does, in the supporting people who are unsheltered, there does continue to be conversation around the day shelter possibility. And I think that is on the radar for inclusion in any kind of potentially any kind of project related to what happens at St. Philip's. A few of us are going to Oak City Cares, Old City, in early February because of that. So
yeah, I think you're right on that. The St. Philip's Urban Ministry site redevelopment, and that's one of those pipeline projects that could end up doing shelter, day shelter, and some of the housing, if you go vertical, having everything.
That's the plan. I think there's 4 of us involved in it at this point.
I'm in favor of that, especially when a lot of the people who are chronically homeless and spent time in shelters end up kind of coming back to those shelters because that's where their family is, essentially. It's where their community is. And being able to find a way to make it economically viable and doing that. So that could be that could also be on that list. So what I'm hearing is executive committee to take the lead, ask for a few other people from HSAC and COC to join. We can sort of post the date, make it an open meeting to COC members. Anybody who would like, I don't know, or do you want to try and whittle it down and say, if you want to be on this, please apply and we will choose. But to me, that feels a little bit not as good as making it an open meeting and trying to have it as a facilitated discussion.
Yeah, I like the idea of us kind of putting the structure around it with the facilitated meeting just because of the short time frame. And then otherwise, I think, it's easy to get caught up in trying to accommodate, as many schedules as possible, which we always want to do the best we can, but we really do have a short time frame here. So I think just let's have an open meeting. This is how it's going to go. And then we'll just take, the information we get from there and provide it, to the council.
Maybe there's a way for us to do 2 or 3 meetings, like kind of one a week. So people have an opportunity. If the one meeting doesn't work for them, there's like maybe a morning, a noon, and an afternoon meeting. And it allows people who want to come to all 3 can come to all 3. And what we hear at one meeting can get shared at the next meeting and see if we can build that way. Thoughts?
My only thought is that feasible with pit count going on. There's a lot of people going in extra meetings for pit count prep. There's always something. I get that.
Yeah. There's a gazillion things on the plate. And it's just sort of if it's important, people will show up or they'll respond to the survey. And we
Yeah.
can let people know that, hey, if you can't come to a meeting, that's fine. There's going to be a survey and we'll have a blank space on the survey of other thoughts. It's not going to be a multiple choice. You can write in Donald Duck if you think Donald Duck is the solution to homelessness in Durham, for instance.
Sharita, what are your thoughts on this?
What do you mean, Helen?
Are you for the executive committee taking the lead and having the facilitated meeting and then putting a survey out to CSC? What do you, or
Is that the proposal that's on the table? Because I thought the survey was already out.
No,
We're
no.
gonna
It's a
use
different-
that same survey.
Different
only
surveys.
yeah, it would be a different survey because we may have different options. We may not, we may have the same options.
Yeah, I'm in support of that.
Okay.
Well, my only question is, will we be attempting to get any kind of consumer input into the process?
Good question.
I think it's very worthwhile. I don't know how many consumers are gonna be able to join like a remote meeting. So it may be advantageous for service providers to sort of reach out to people who are experiencing homelessness and sort of maybe be the liaison in a less than perfect solution. If we can get people to attend a virtual meeting who are experiencing homelessness to add thoughts, that would be great.
I mean, to some extent, isn't that fulfilled by the nature of the HSAC? If the HSAC reviews and we have folks with lived experience on that group, and this is different than the home ARP, where it is making distinct decisions about what will happen. This is making strong recommendations that would have further vetting processes. I'm just thinking of timeline issues. I think the engagement is great. I'm just concerned about timeline, and by the design of the HSAC, isn't some of that addressed?
I understand. I understand the question you're asking. I just feel like a lot of times we think that we know all the issues, the problems and solutions, and sometimes we don't really ask our clients. We just kind of do what we do when we work with our clients.
Mm-hmm.
You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, what if we are completely and totally missing the mark? I think it's always a possibility there. And we should be trying to figure out how we can bring that voice to our solutions and whenever possible. And that's the only reason why I say that. So, but yeah, I mean, it might be difficult to do. I wish that we as a entity were doing a whole lot better with gathering those voices and letting those voices be a part of the things that we do and the things that we think about. We don't. So, I mean, that's probably even more of a reason why it's a problem for us to even consider being able to do that. So,
Lloyd?
yeah, that's it. I'm sorry. I didn't even mean to put a damper on the plan. Y'all
No,
go for it.
No, that's not a damper. I'm just asking when in the process we can do that most successfully. That's the piece I'm asking.
Lloyd?
It's just always going to be never. If we stay doing what we're doing the way we're doing it, it's going to be never, because it's always going to be an issue. So you have to figure out intentionally who we want to be as a representative, and spokesperson for all folks homeless in Durham.
Russ, did you see Elijah's question in chat?
I will say, while you're reading that, Russ, I will say, I want to go back and find, I think Lloyd did some listening and input sessions with the special NOFO. And he has some data from persons who are currently unsheltered. I mean, that data is a couple months old at this point, or a few months old. Perhaps there may be some items in there, and if there's enough time, we might be able to. I'm hesitant to commit to doing some listening sessions in the shelters, or asking the street outreach team to ask their clients, or Sharita to ask your clients as you're seeing them some of that question, and then sort of pull themes. But that may be the best option we could do. There's nothing to be sorry about, Sharita.
Yeah.
We do need to hear from the consumers who are experiencing this. We don't need to build what we think is what they need. We need to listen to what they think the problem is, and listen to what they think the solution is. And then it's up for us to take their vision of the problem and their vision of the solution and find a way to turn that into something that is doable. So you're right on the mark, Sharita. There's nothing to be apologizing for. And we just need to figure out how to make that happen. I think there are some ways that we can incorporate some of the data we've gleaned from the last listening session. We might be able to glean some more. We just may have to ask case managers to do some, interviews and collect some data and funnel it back to us.
It also may be some good information from our gaps analysis presentation as well. So, maybe we have some stuff that we can already use.
Absolutely. But absolutely keep it on the radar, Sharita. Those are things that we've got to keep front and center and make sure that we do.
The reason I focused Eliza's question to Russ, because I know, Russ, you're working with the point time count.
Yeah, I like I said in my answer, I think it's just a question of what's the protocol for adding a question, and that's an I don't know, and the technical, like the adding it to the questionnaire list. So I can't see that it would hurt. We just have to figure out how we'd word it.
My suspicion is it would not be part of the Counting Us apps. It would probably have to be a handwritten outside of the Counting Us app that we're using for the point in time. It would have to be like a handwritten notes, because I don't think at this point we can do any custom questions in the Counting Us app.
Yeah,
it would be a good time to catch people there and to definitely be talking to the people who need the services.
It's a great suggestion. I think there's a way to do it, and if anybody can figure out how to make that happen, it would be Russ and Lloyd and the PIT team, and I think Ruby and Melissa are helping out on that as well.
Your assignment, should you choose to accept it.
Yeah, Russ, go forward and
I'll
get the
send
answers, my
to the
friend.
team.
Okay.
That's how Russ figures it out. Others figure it out.
Russ, you're voluntolding the team.
Nah, they love this problem solving.
Yeah.
We have 15 minutes left in our scheduled meeting time. So,
all right, so let's get to our agenda planning document then, and get through that unless there's other things. So we've got, let me see if I can share this. All right, so we've got the possible gaps in output. My computer's frozen. Anyway, the gaps analysis meeting was supposed to be a gaps analysis update. I think it is our executive committee update. Does that sound right?
Yep.
We got to do the picture of HSAC.
we have to vote for our new vice chair.
Yep. Vice chair. We also need to priority discussion / plan. Do we want to pick a date while we're all here together that we're going to hold this first meeting so that we can put it in the agenda and remind people?
You mean for?
For our input session on priority?
I think we should. We can't. Because the HSAC meeting is on the 18th.
Mm-hmm.
What does everybody's time look like?
Pull up my calendar.
Friday mornings are usually good for me, except for the 27th. I won't be around then, but
Yeah, I'm out that day too.
You want to try? Do we want to do a morning meeting?
depends on the day.
Okay.
Thursdays are out for me mostly. We do vaccines on Thursdays, so
What about Tuesday? Tuesday, the 24th might be too close. What about the afternoon of Wednesday, February 1st?
works for me.
Like after 2 p.m.?
Yeah, that's great for me.
Yep, me too.
Say that date again. Sorry, Russ is over here writing questions in the chat.
February 1st, anytime after 2 p.m.
Yeah, actually,
Okay.
it's a miracle.
I know. Wow. Eliza, would that work with you? Sharita, does after 2 on the first work?
Can you give me one sentence for this meeting as I had to run to the bathroom? I'm sorry.
Oh, sure. It's the meeting to start getting some input on what that wish list would be.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. 2 o'clock on February 1st. Got it.
Okay. Does 2 o'clock work, or do you want to make it later than 2 o'clock?
2 is fine.
All right, 2 o'clock it is. So let me go back to my screen share here. Sharita, does that work for you?
No, not really, but I'm gonna try to work it out.
Would later than, would 2:30 be better, or 3? On your schedule, Sharita, or all of those times are bad?
All those times are bad.
Okay,
So just leave it where you have it and I will try to block it out or something. So February 1st at 2
February
o'clock.
1st at 2 p.m.
Okay. Is it for an hour?
I would suspect it would be, maybe what do you think? 60 or 90 minutes? I kind of feel like 90 minutes is probably what we're going to need.
I can try to give you an hour. I mean, y'all might not need me, but I'll try to give you an hour.
We will
Okay.
take what we can get.
We'll take anything we can get from you, Sharita.
Absolutely.
And we'll record, we can record it as well,
Sure.
if everybody agrees to it. So priority discussion plan for wish list items, refers to that. Okay. Russ, what about a pit count update?
Sure.
Slash, that's on the 25th, right?
Yes,
Okay.
I should have that ingrained in my head, but yes, 25th.
No, I know. I told city council it was the 25th a couple times yesterday, and then I started doubting myself and was like, oh, wait, maybe it's the 24th, but I'm pretty sure it's the 25th. Is there a registration for anybody who wants to volunteer to help? That was,
Yeah, we've been distributing that. And in fact, I had something out to the mayor yesterday. We've got the chair of the county commissioners is coming to speak. We're trying to
Okay.
get the mayor too, and we're going to send it to the city council today.
Perfect.
I
because
think
we're-
it's, I think most people in HSAC have gotten it, but yeah, Melissa sent it out, I think.
Okay, yeah, city council was asking about it yesterday if, to volunteer.
Yeah, some of them
How
have
many
already
to
signed
go?
up, but I was working on an email to them yesterday and just got tied up.
Perfect. So.
We
you'll
did
do-
send it to the full COC as well, so HSAC and full COC.
All right, so Russ will do a pit update. White, do we want to do any update on the white flag? And it sounds like gaps analysis is, I don't know why I can't delete this.
Do we need to close the loop at all around white flag? I mean, in terms of just providing a update on kind of how things have gone so far and if there still needs to be any. I can't remember if we closed the loop on sending a letter or not.
We have not.
We have not sent a letter yet because we didn't have a plan. And then once we came up with the plan, the dollar amount is small enough that we probably don't need to go to county and city council to ask for additional money for that. It's something that, we could probably find the money to make it happen. The question is bandwidth now. And we've got a whole lot of stuff coming at us and whether or not we can stand up 3 contracts. So we're working through capacity challenges right now and trying to see what we can do, because we also have a few other things that need a lot of attention and are going to take a lot of time in the next few weeks and months. But we definitely should put some sort of an update here. And we could do an update from open table and expansion update. / planning. How's that sound?
Looks like it's gonna fill up the time for us quite nicely.
Okay, well, the gap analysis is coming. I think Sharita, you said the gaps analysis wasn't going to work this month.
It's not.
Okay.
They're still like doing the final tabulations, and the person who is helping with that is not available right now.
Okay.
So
All right, so executive committee update, vote for vice chair. Do we want any discussion on this priority wish list items? Or do we just want to share the plan and have everybody show up? Part of me kind of feels like it's not a bad idea to, we probably have some time in here that we could allow 15 minutes for people to, for lack of a better term, throw spaghetti at the wall and at least start getting a list of things together that would help us sort of say, here's the spaghetti on the wall, here are the themes, and here are the themes that match up with our data analysis that might help structure the meeting on the 1st.
Is there, and I don't mean this as sarcastic as it's going to sound, because this includes me, what I'm about to say. So is there a way to structure the conversation so that it's not just like, hey, what do y'all think? Because then like the same 5 of us are going to make comments as normal, and have some way to do a bit of a breakout with, and maybe even come with like, here's 8 things we've already thought of. Like, how would you prioritize these 8 things? Because I think we all have some sense of probably what the top 10 are. Could we take something like that and even use some kind of like the breakout opportunity and then be like, okay, in groups for 10 minutes, how would your 3 of you do this, and then bring it back so that we can encourage more participation?
Yeah, I like that, Russ. I'm thinking about like the sticky method that we've used in our housing meetings where like, what is it, Jamboard, where everyone can create a sticky note and write their ideas. And so that can happen in small groups. And so or in a big group and everyone's kind of forced to put their ideas down. And then you can kind of see where ideas are aligning or where categories might be present.
I'm fine with that. I think it's great. Anything that we can do to help sort of get voices heard and get as many ideas out so that we can start paring down and finding themes and come up with something in a short timeline. I'm good on that.
And then we would take those ideas to the meeting on February 1st.
We sort of take that paired, we won't take all the ideas back, or we do take the ideas and maybe sort of flush them out in terms of, okay, here are the things that are short, medium, long term. Here are things that are more likely to happen faster. I don't know, just sort of.
Well, and we
I don't
could,
know that I'd even, I mean, if it's kind of a wish list, I don't know that I'd even put the value on it of things that could happen short, medium term. Like, I mean, I think really just hearing what people think would do the trick, so to speak.
Okay.
And then coming back to, yeah. I think in the early stage, the more we can do to just get people coming up with ideas, because I think if we say, well, this couldn't happen or this can happen, that may shut people's, and I hear what you're saying. There's the practical aspect to it. Yeah.
I'm saying like on the February 1st meeting to bring
Oh.
that wish list back at February 1st. Like I'm
Sorry.
thinking like
Sorry.
the HSAC meeting is the brain dump. And then between the February 1st meeting, or between the HSAC meeting and the February 1st meeting, that brain dump sort of gets structured in a way like, here are things that are a 5 to 10 year time frame. I mean, building a brand new building is 3 to 5 years minimum.
Could Sharita, would you have capacity? I mean, just you as chair and having worked on this, I mean, you've been chair of that committee for you're in your 4th year, I think now. Could you create, like, if Sharita was creating a top 10 list, and you've heard from more people along the way than probably any of the rest of us, that this group could review and potentially use as the base for the top 10 list that would be used at HSAC? I don't know if my question's making sense.
You said me could create a top 10 list?
Well, yeah, if somebody's going to draw like an initial list that people can take.
I could try. I don't know if my list is a thorough enough list, but I could try.
My caffeine may be wearing out. I may have made a mistake. So do we need a list or just full sticky, like everybody throw all their ideas out?
I think we were talking about having everybody
Sorry, yes.
get their
I take
ideas.
my question back, though I still want to see Sharita.
But Tarita will be in that meeting, so she will definitely be putting her ideas on that list.
Could we do like categories?
Here is a list that we started. Sorry, Sharita, I didn't mean to cut you off, but here's a list that we did start at some point. And this was kind of a wish list that we had started putting together back in 2020 or 20, yeah, probably around there.
Well, if we don't get
How did units not make this list?
How did what?
Units, like other than PSH.
Additional support services, language engagement.
I
Probably
think
because
when it was discussed, it was coming up with the biggest block in the system is a lack of PSH units. And we knew that there was already planned for inclusion of affordable housing units in several of the projects ongoing.
I think doing the breakout that we're talking about at the HSAC meeting is going to encourage more people to come up with ideas, because when we're in this big group of people, it's hard to get people to talk. We can break them into smaller groups of 3 to 5. Then you probably
Right, that's why I was suggesting like categories. Could we come up with categories? Then the groups could be category groups that you could space out, and then it could focus it more intention,
that's a good
so maybe like supportive services,
idea.
units.
My concern, my only
units
concern with that is that if we do that, it's a good idea, but we'd have to make sure the people who are in those breakout groups would need to know something, make sure we know something about what's going on with those categories. And are we going to have people join a group, which takes a good 5
Longer.
minutes?
Mhm.
Or are we just going to automatically assign? So if we don't do categories, then we can just automatically assign. You don't have to worry about areas of expertise. But
If we
yeah,
have, if we just do breakout groups though, then I would think that we need to have some questions. And maybe not a lot, maybe 2 or 3
yeah, we could
that
certainly have
each
people.
breakout session ask, and and it's facilitated down that way. And then we can come together and bring all the responses together.
Yeah, we could definitely have some facilitated questions, no doubt. But we're going to try something new and different in HSAC. Yay.
I like it.
I love it. I love it.
All right, so so Melissa can figure out, I think Melissa's very Zoom savvy and can do breakouts for us. It sounds like we need to come up with some facilitated questions or some starter questions for people to think about in the group that'll help sort of get the juices flowing and give people what, 10 or 15 minutes in the group?
Look and see how much time everything else is going to take, and then we just whatever that's
Well,
going to.
I think it sounds like this is a pretty high priority. I think the rest of the stuff can be condensed. I think, executive committee updates, a couple minutes. Russ, a pit update is probably not going to be more than 5 or 10 minutes would be my guess. Hold on, you're muted.
And it could go at the end as an announcement, but almost, I mean, for all practical purposes, so that you do it while people's energy's high, these breakout groups.
Yeah, white flag could be a pretty short update as well. And we could rather than open table doing a presentation about how things are going, we could just sort of give feedback on the directive that came from HSAC and policy and planning to, circle back and close that loop on the request to go to council and commissioners. We could just sort of close that loop, which wouldn't be a big discussion. It would just be let's close the loop on it.
So we start with the usual public comment, approval minutes, and then the vice chair. So those absolutely have to be done. And
Yes.
then we could do the breakouts, the discussion about why we're doing this and the importance of it, and then breaking out, and then coming back, and if we need a brief discussion after to kind of conclude, okay, and then everything else. Sounds great.
So we
I'm
could
also pretty good with Zoom too, Melissa. So if you have any questions, I've been a Zoom master for a while.
The only challenge I think that this places on us is I wish that like the timing of the city request was after we had been able to get a handle on what our home ARP kind of things would be, so that we could try to figure out how to maybe couple them together to get like the biggest bang for the choices that we make. You get what I'm saying?
Well, I think at the end of the day, Sharita, by the time I think they'll both end up getting done at about the same time. So we're kind of working two different requests at the same time, because the home ARP has to go through a couple public hearings. So we're still working on getting input, still working on getting draft language put together. It has to go through city council for a public hearing. It has to go to another public hearing. So we won't even have the home ARP stuff finalized until late February or early March to be able to submit to HUD in March. Then by the time we get through this process, it'll be middle of February. So I think we'll have a pretty good handle on where the home ARP lines up by the time shortly after we get through the February 1st public input meeting on what the wish list is. And then some of this comes down to, what the wish list may have a bunch of things here and it may have a bunch of things here, and home ARP may be able to help with some of it. And then it's sort of up to, the powers that be who have to pull the funding levers to figure out, oh, here, let's use home ARP for this portion. We'll use to maximize it, because I think that's going to be the goal of everything we do, is how do we maximize all these resources.
Yeah.
Do we want to share any of this stuff from this old list with the group as just kind of a reminder of things that have been thought of in the past as examples of things?
There's pros and cons to doing it.
I agree. That's why I'm asking.
I think it could be more generative for folks to blank slate it a little bit. And then
Okay.
interestingly, then we have the ability before we go to that next meeting to pull up what comes from HSAC and this old list and go, there's themes over time.
Yeah.
All right, blank slate it
Good
is. That makes life easier for me.
All
Thank you.
right. Anything else that we need to talk about before we adjourn? Because we're already over time. All right. If all hearts and minds are clear, then I will take a motion to adjourn.
I move.
Thank you,
I'll
Sharita.
second.
All right.
All right.
All in favor. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you all.
care.
Have a good
All right,
one.
thank
Talk to
you.
you soon. All right.
Everyone.
Bye, everyone.